In the late 20th century, paleontologists started to unearth fossils of feathered dinosaurs from rocks in China that were about 125 million years old. They had long assumed that birds were related to dinosaurs, and this discovery only confirmed what they already thought was true. But it also left them with a lot of questions. Why did these dinosaurs have feathers? And more importantly, how did feathers evolve, and what were they for? The fossil record shows us that feathers were associated with multiple lineages of dinosaurs, including Ornithomimids, which were ostrich-like dinosaurs, Therizinosaurs, which were weird, tall, thin dinosaurs with huge claws, and of course, Avian Dinosaurs, which are the direct ancestors of modern birds. So feathers clearly weren't directly related to flight. If they were, we'd expect to see them only in the group that led to birds. But feathers turned up all over the place in the fossil record. But there was one other unusual feature shared by many of these species. They all came from what is now the Northern Hemisphere, even though during the time they lived, the Earth was covered in supercontinents called Laurasia and Gondwana, and Laurasia contained almost all of the major land masses of the Northern Hemisphere. So why didn't we find fossils of feathered dinosaurs in the Southern Hemisphere? Or put another way, why are all of these feathered dinosaurs from the north? A new study published today in the journal PNAS says that this geographic pattern can help solve the mystery of why and how feathers evolved. The answer, according to the authors, might have everything to do with a weird adaptation, the ability to change sex. Dinosaurs diversified and spread out across the globe during the Triassic period, which began around 252 million years ago and ended 201 million years ago. But during the early Triassic, the vast majority of them were concentrated in the supercontinent of Pangaea's northern half. That's because the southern half of Pangaea was dry and cold, which wasn't great for large reptiles like dinosaurs. According to the authors of this new paper, this geographic constraint was actually a key factor in the evolution of feathers. That's because dinosaurs that lived farther north were exposed to higher levels of UV radiation than their relatives who lived farther south. More UV radiation could have been a big problem since it damages cells and DNA. But the authors hypothesized that some dinosaurs may have used feathers to protect themselves from harmful rays. And in order to test this idea, they needed to know if this geographic pattern held true for all dinosaurs or just certain kinds. So they collected data on the geographical distribution of more than 300 dinosaur species from the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. Then they used statistical methods to reconstruct the ancestral range for different groups of dinosaurs. And they found that the geographic pattern of Northern Hemisphere dominance held true for nearly all dinosaurs except one group, the sauropods. These were the long-necked dinosaurs like Brachiosaurus and Argentinosaurus. Sauropods first appeared in the late Triassic in what is now South America, which at the time was part of Gondwana, and by the Jurassic, they'd made their way into Laurasia. So the authors think that early sauropods were adapted to lower UV environments. This could be why sauropods don't have feathers, and why they were mostly located in the Southern Hemisphere. According to the authors, this would mean that the common ancestor of all dinosaurs likely lived in the north, but it would also mean that feathers probably first evolved in the Northern Hemisphere too. Now, while this doesn't answer the question of why feathers evolved in the first place, the authors say that their findings lend support to the idea that feathers originally served an anti-UV function. But this is just one piece of the puzzle, and if their hypothesis is correct, it still doesn't explain why so many different groups of dinosaurs independently evolved feathers. One possibility is that feathers may have also helped dinosaurs cool off, kind of like how a bird sweats through its feathers today. Another possibility is that feathers could have been used for display. This might seem strange, since we think of feathers as being good for hiding from predators or confusing them, but animals use bright colors and unique patterns to attract mates. Maybe feathered dinosaurs were doing the same thing. But what makes the feather as a display adaptation weirder is that the dinosaurs that had feathers were often not very colorful. Scientists think that the feathers of dinosaurs were probably more like the down feathers of baby chicks or modern emus, rather than the bright, colorful feathers of songbirds. A few years ago, Scientists took a stab at answering this question by recreating feathers from several species of dinosaurs using the preserved structure of feathers and skin impressions. Then they looked at how light reflected off these feathers to get an idea of their color. It turns out that most of these feathered dinosaurs probably had feathers that were either black, brown, or gray, which wouldn't exactly stand out compared to the dark or rocky landscapes they inhabited. However, the study found that a few species had brightly colored feathers, especially the Microraptor, a four-winged dinosaur from the genus Microraptor. One species in particular, Microraptor G, had the coolest feathers of all. Its feathers were iridescent, meaning that they shifted in color depending on how light hit them. Some parts of its feathers were red and blue, while others were yellow and green. The authors think that iridescence may have enhanced other colors, making them brighter and more attractive to potential mates. This might also explain why Microraptor had so many feathers. It seems likely that the ancestors of modern birds were Microraptors or something like them. And birds are the only dinosaurs that kept their feathers once they took to the sky. What's more, birds also have a special structure called a Preen gland near their tail that secretes oils and waxes used for waterproofing and maintaining the condition of feathers. But how did the Preen gland evolve, and why isn't it found in any other animal? Well, turns out Microraptor had a Preen gland too. So the authors think that the evolution of the structure might have played a key role in the origin of birds. Feathers may have started out as a simple adaptation to protect dinosaurs from UV radiation, but over time, they became more and more elaborate. As feathers became larger and more complex, natural selection may have favored dinosaurs that used them for display. And the evolution of the Preen gland might have allowed dinosaurs to care for their feathers, leading to even more elaborate structures. Feathers aren't unique to birds. In fact, they're a shared derived trait, meaning that they're found in a group of organisms and their common ancestors, but not in organisms that diverge before the common ancestor. In other words, birds and dinosaurs are both part of a larger group that has feathers. Even though feathers are a shared derived trait, no other group alive today has them. So why should we believe that feathers originally evolved for display rather than for insulation or protection from UV radiation? Well, it's because feathers just don't make sense as a defense against predators. If we look at modern animals that live in the same ecosystems where feathered dinosaurs once roamed, we don't see evidence of feathers being good for hiding from predators. And if feathers were for insulation, we'd expect to see them in animals living in colder climates. But neither of those things are true. This is why scientists like the idea that feathers might have started out as scales, which are flat, rigid structures made of keratin, the same material that makes our fingernails and hair. Scales help prevent water loss and are also good for protecting animals from UV radiation. If that's the case, then the next step might have been to evolve into feathers. Since feathers are made of the same stuff as scales, and are also thought to have started out as scales, it's also possible that feathers may have been selected for based on their shape rather than their material. One researcher who was not involved in the study pointed out that feathers and scales are the same structure, a flattened epithelial scale. So feathers could have started out as scales that just got bigger and softer until they became feathers. Basically, feathers are just modified scales. But one thing that's for sure is that feathers are a really important part of the evolutionary history of life on Earth. They allowed dinosaurs to diversify and eventually gave rise to birds, which, let's face it, are pretty cool. And maybe they'll help us understand the origins of life elsewhere in the universe. Thanks for watching this episode. We've made thousands of educational videos over the years, and we've been able to offer them for free because of our patrons. So to all of our patrons, thank you for what you do to make this happen. If you're not a patron, but you want to learn more about what that means, you can go to our support page,